time on my
Hello there, welcome back to my channel, Trisha Renee's Art Studio. Today, I will be showing you how I make my best-selling product, the DIY ready-to-paint plaster ceramic Sailor Moon wand set. That way you too can learn how to make ready-to-paint plaster ceramics using molds. But let's talk safety first. You need to wear a mask when working with plaster. When you mix in the plaster powder and the water, you can actually see a powder cloud up in the air above your mixing bowl. So you want to do this in a well-ventilated area. Do note that this will make your work area quite messy, so be prepared for that. I use Plaster of Paris powder, and the directions call for 2 parts powder, 1 part water. This will not work for our purposes. This might work if you're literally plastering a wall to cover up holes, but using these proportions will not allow the plaster to find its way to form itself into the nooks and crannies of your silicone or plastic molds. I never measure out the plaster and water ratios, but I just keep adding more plaster until it's the right consistency. For 1 part water, I usually do between 1 and 1.5 parts plaster. It needs to be the consistency of a somewhat thick pancake batter. Not too watery, but still not too stiff. You also want to make sure you are working fast. Plaster of Paris has a 6-minute working time window. So once you start mixing, you have about 5 minutes to complete what you're doing and let it sit in the molds. And just like with resin, when you mix plaster, it does get a lot of holes and air bubbles in it. So to remedy that, just like I would plaster, I use my heat gun. So when I'm mixing, after I've got it almost mixed all the way, I use my heat gun on a low setting just for a few seconds and stir a bit more, making sure all the bubbles seem to be popped. Pouring the plaster into the molds can often be quite messy. Once you have your plaster at the right consistency, you can go ahead and begin pouring. Sometimes if you want to use a spoon and kind of ladle it in there, that's an option too, or sometimes I just pour it. Your best option would probably be to use a plastic measuring cup because it does have that pointed tip, reducing a lot of the spillover mess that I'm getting with this bowl. After I fill all of my molds, again I'm going to come back with my heat gun on the low setting, going over all of the plaster again just to remove any additional bubbles. Usually after I'm done pouring the plaster into the molds, I'll kind of bang the mold on the table a little bit, or even just lift it up about an inch or two and then drop it on the table just to kind of bang out any of those extra bubbles in there. I have kind of fine-tuned a cleanup plan with my bowl and my spoon that I use, well, spatula. I use a rubber hard silicone type spatula. That way when I wash it, it's a little bit easier to wash off the plaster. And then I use a thin plastic bowl. That way, once all of the plaster has dried up inside of the bowl, I just kind of crunch the bowl, squeeze the bowl a little bit, and a lot of the plaster will just break into a bunch of like pieces, and you just dump it out. You never want to pour plaster down the sink. Never, ever, ever. That will ruin your pipes, clog your pipes. Just don't do that. I always let my bowl and stuff set, let it harden, and then it's easy just to break up and then throw the pieces away. Once I get most of the solid pieces thrown away and there's still a little bit left on there, then I'll go ahead and use water to kind of rinse it out. After about an hour, it's time to demold. Let's see how these beauties turned out. While demolding, it is time to do quality control. Pulling them out, you will see if they turned out right or not. Sometimes some of them have huge air bubbles, which ruins the designs. Now is when I sort them out, weeding out the damaged ones, keeping the good ones. I put the damaged ones in a basket for my daughter so she can paint them whenever she wants. All of these plaster designs are now ready to be painted or shipped to the customer to be painted. These can be painted with basic craft acrylic paint. I suggest after painting is complete that you seal over it with any type of Mod Podge. Just be careful not to break these. Please comment below if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to have an answer for you. Thank you for watching today's tutorial. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to be focusing on more portrait drawing, so keep an eye out for that. You can please like and subscribe, and then I'll see you next time on Trisha Renee's Art Studio.